Ray Fittipaldo of the Post-Gazette going to join us in 1 minute here on the Fan Hotline presented by Sullivan Super Service, providing trusted plumbing and HVAC service for over 50 years. Callis has been bugging me all morning. He said something earlier, and I kind of scoffed at it. And now, every 10 seconds, he keeps jumping in my ear saying, "Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me?" Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do for you, Callis. I'm going to tuck Fiona into bed tonight, my 3-month-old. I'm going to give her the bottle, get her all nestled safely in her bassinet. I'll put my 4-year-old to sleep, and then I'll drive over to your house in Green Tree. I'll make sure I'll cuddle you. I'll read you a story. I'm a big fan of Shel Silverstein's Missing Piece. I'll read that for you. Give you some warm milk, and I'll send you off to bed. I mean, what are we doing? No, I'm not mad. Well, now I am. Wasn't mad at you before.
I can't believe you're just letting him get underneath your skin like that.
I just don't I don't need to hold your hand.
So wait a minute. He's doing it on purpose.
I can't tell.
Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me?
You're
Are you
kinda-
mad at me? What, do I got 2 wives now?
You're kind of laughing. Are you actually mad? Because this all started over a conversation
Don't.
He's doing it again.
about Tommy John surgery, and you said that the bone breaks, and that's why you need Tommy John surgery.
Just get the red.
That's not what I said.
Get the red.
Ray Fittipaldo joins us now. Good morning, Ray. Would you? I don't know if you've got free time tonight. Would you like to tuck Callis into bed?
Yeah, I might want to do that. I honestly, I didn't know Shel Silverstein was still a thing in this generation. That's from back in my childhood.
Did you read Missing Piece? It's a wonderful book.
I remember there were two that I really liked back in the day, but that one does not sound familiar, no.
For whatever reason, that's the book that came to my mind. A Light in the Attic, also a classic. So is Falling Up. But I do digress. All right, Ray. So the Steelers have had a whole bunch of draft visitors so far. And I heard Pony say this yesterday, that each of the first 4 guys drafted by the Steelers last year all came in at some point for a pre-draft workout. So obviously, and we've known this for a long time, they put a lot of stock into this. So what are these visitors telling you, at least in terms of positions that they're looking at, Ray?
Yeah, right. So 18 of their 30 visits are in the books, and that's not including the local Pitt guys or the Whippeal guys. So they got 12 more. But if you look at it, Adam, lots of O-linemen, excluding center. So lots of tackles, lots of receivers, lots of corners, lots of defensive linemen. And I don't think that's going to change a whole heck of a lot here over these next, they probably can do 3 more this week, and they'll probably finish up the middle of next week. So they'll get their 12 in, I think, within the next week or so. And I think they're not trying to hide who they're targeting or what position they're targeting. So, if you want to read into it, I would say probably right tackle right now is the favorite at number 20, and then you could probably, connect the dots there with the corners and the receivers and the defensive ends on day 2 of the draft.
Ray, could you see a scenario where the Steelers get absolutely desperate and maybe they draft a center in the 3rd round and, it just doesn't work out the way that they've planned, and the Steelers re-signing Mason Cole?
See, I don't think they would have cut Mason Cole if they didn't have confidence in Nate Herbig, because when you look at the cap savings on Cole's contract, guys, I want to say it was around $3 million in cap savings. It was not a huge number. So I think they made that determination that Mason Cole could not be their starting center this season. And if it came to it, if they couldn't get a guy in the draft or if they couldn't get a free agent, they were going to feel comfortable going forward with Nate Herbig, believing that he could be better than Mason Cole was in 2023. So I get it. They're probably going to draft a center in the first 3 rounds. They could wheel and deal after the draft if they don't get one. But I think in any kind of scenario where they were looking at the Mason Cole thing back in February or I think early March, whenever that happened, they made the determination back then that they could get by with Nate Herbig rather than Mason Cole as their starter.
So what do you make then? You say they've had a bunch of visitors, and all signs are kind of pointing to an offensive tackle in round 1. Why the lack of centers?
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if, like I said, they got 12 more. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in 2 or 3 here over the next week or so. Pat Meyer was at Jackson Powers Johnson's pro day, so I assume they got to visit extensively out there. I could see Van Pran coming in. I could see Frazier coming in. If not, what would it take for them to drive down Route 79 and do a little workout for him, if they didn't get enough time with him at the Big 12 Pro Day. So I think whatever it comes to, I think they'll get the information on these guys that they need to get, whether it's in a top 30 visit or not. I think they, we'll have ways of, meeting with those guys and getting all that stuff straightened out.
Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette joining us here on the Fan Morning Show. Brian Baldinger said, and we played it yesterday, that he thinks Zach Frazier is more NFL ready than Jackson Powers-Johnson. Doug Whaley said that going back a couple of weeks. He'll join us today at 9. In other years, Ray, I wouldn't think that would be a tiebreaker. But when Herbig is your only other option, might that be for them?
Yeah, it's interesting how this center class is playing out. It's regarded as a really good draft for centers, but there's not that Marquise Pouncey in there, that really athletic, really strong guy that is going to be a decades-long starter. So, you could pick apart each of these guys. Jackson Powers-Johnson was hot early in the process. He really had a great Senior Bowl. But, teams are kind of saying right now, well, he's not that athletic, and, they're picking him apart. And I understand that happens, for every prospect in this draft. I think Frazier is probably similar, tremendous athlete, but he's not that twitchy Marquise Pouncey type of athlete. He's just a really good, wrestling background, can stay on his feet, that type of an athlete. So, I think Frazier is a good player. I think Barton's a good player. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson is a good player. I don't think any of those guys will be available at 51, but I also don't know that any of them have the value at number 20 if you want to take them with the first pick either.
Ray, I can't remember, but in the recent future, have the Steelers ever operated a pick for player trade during the draft in the recent future? I feel like you can get quality and you can make moves alongside of making picks, and if you have an extra pick, you can try to get a guy and maybe a center that's out there to trade for one of your picks. And one of the scenarios that comes to mind is whenever DeAndre Swift got traded to the Eagles during the draft. I was like, wow, they got DeAndre Swift while they were getting these first round picks. I was like, that's a quality draft alongside of doing a lot of different things. But have the Steelers operated that way in the recent future, and do you see them doing that possibly?
They didn't do that a lot. I don't want to say ever, but I don't remember them doing that with Colbert. But, Doran, it's a new regime, and I think anything is on the table. I think for the most part, those types of trades take place in March when teams are trying to figure out their salary cap, and, they want to be able to, get to their certain salary cap number by the first day of the new league year. That's why they want to get some contracts off the books and stuff like that. But that would be possible. You mentioned the Swift one. Even that's rare, though. I don't recall a lot of pick-for-player trades happening for other teams either. So, usually it's pick-for-pick, and teams are trading down and either trading up to get a guy or trading up down to compile more picks. But, if you're talking specifically about a center, I could see that, but I just don't know about any other position.
Last thing here for you, Ray. Adonai Mitchell, whose first name I just butchered there, the freak wide receiver out of Texas. Steelers had him in for a pre-draft visit. That's a first-round guy. You say that all signs point to offensive tackle, and you've been strong on that for a couple of weeks here. Could they be tempted to take a wide receiver 20th?
They could. I'm not going to close the door on it. Let's see if Thomas from LSU comes in over the next week or so. Maybe that'll give us a better indication if they're seriously considering that. Mitchell was or is 27th on Daniel Jeremiah's big board. So, he's never going to make it to 51. So I just think, they probably have their board pretty much set by now. Or if it's not set, it's getting close to being set. And if all the tackles are gone and they don't feel like there's value taking a center at 20, then a guy like Mitchell or Thomas from LSU could be in play there at number 20. You want to take the best player available on your board at a position of need. And as you guys know, receiver is a big position of need.
Ray, thank you for your time, buddy. We'll talk next week.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, Ray.
Ray Fittipaldo. of the Post-Gazette. I would hate that. I mean, we've talked that up a million different times. I would hate a wide receiver in round one. It's just too deep of a position. Like you can look, this Mitchell guy is fabulous. He's like 6'2", he ran a blazing 40. You know, he kind of profiles like a George Pickens. I don't think you can have too many of those dudes, but I don't need that guy in round one. When you need an offensive tackle, when you need a center, when you need a corner, when you, argument can be made, need a defensive lineman in a draft ripe with all kind of wide receiver talent, I think that'd be a big swing and a miss for the Steelers. And so, frankly, I kind of think that's a wasted visit. Like, for me,
what if he gets pushed out?
He could. I don't see that. I don't see a 6'2" guy that runs that fast. I think he ran a sub 4.4. At 6'2", I don't see a guy falling like that unless he's got character concerns or injury concerns.
No, the draft goes.
I do know how the draft goes.
What is he ranked right now? What do we say?
He's a first-round pick. I saw him.
There's a bunch of first-round
picks. I saw him mocked to the Steelers yesterday. I forget what the outlet was. Honestly, I would prefer tackle. If it's a center, okay.
Yeah, but what if one of those tackles gets pushed down? I feel like you could look at it either way. If you have a first-round evaluation on a tackle, you have a first-round evaluation on a receiver, somebody is not going to go in the first round but still have that evaluation of a first-round pick that you can get in the second.
Well, we've talked about this. You could trade back later into the first round, and you'd feel pretty good about your options there. But at tackle, like there are 8, maybe 9 first-round quality tackles. And so you might be able to have even your pick of a couple at 20. That's why there's not as many tackles even in a class with a lot of them as there are wide receivers, though. And we've seen them in the past. They've found guys. Deontay Johnson, don't like him off the field. Mostly like what he did on the field. You get him, in the 3rd round? You get George Pickens later on. Antonio Brown, a 6th-round pick. I think you can get a receiver and that guy be productive and not have to pay a first-round pick for it, whereas I don't feel as good about their track record of offensive linemen in that regard. Like Dan Moore Jr., you take him, in the 4th round and you make him your starting left tackle. It doesn't mean he's a good starting left tackle. You take Kendrick Green, the 3rd round, and he's your starting center. I don't like that. Receivers, I think you can.